Buckminster Fuller speaks of as the bird's extension of itself. He describes the nest as part of process bird, the beaver's dam part of process beaver, the fence, the house, the clothes, a part of process man, man's extension of himself. Fuller speculated as to just what it might be that a traveler from outer space would recognize as the first evidence of process man on Earth. It now seems certain that the first clue to his presence would be the concentration of pollutants that collect around the large cities. Here, man's process has, in fact, become his complete environment. Everything he sees and touches, even the air and the water, is composed of elements that he has produced. If man would modify this environment, he must recognize it as a dynamic process. He must build an imagery that will enable him to submit this process to a rigorous kind of analysis, an imagery that will show the city as a living organism. Historically, the image has always had some influence on the city, but its role changed drastically with the invention of photography. Photography brought to the urban scene a special wonder and delight. In addition, it held a new manifestation of truth. The information it recorded was apt to be accurate and objective. Once this was demonstrated, the demand for photography was explosive. Early photographers, Fenton, Frith, and others, struggling with wet glass plates under heartbreaking conditions, showed the world for the first time what the ancient monuments were really like. Then the carte de visite, and the invention of the stereo. The experience of the stereograph is a very special one that holds the view and the viewer in space apart from the world around them. The appeal was universal. By the 1860s, stereos had developed into a fad and a fantastic business, which perhaps more than anything else made people of the late 19th century aware of the life, the architecture, and the cities of foreign lands. Special photographic libraries came into being to assist scholars, architects, and planners. In 1865, when Haussmann was replanning Paris, Charles Marvell was commissioned to make a complete photographic study of the affected area. Other European cities were publishing photographs that dramatized their growing urban problems. In New York, the photography of police reporter Jacob Riis brought stark reality to illustrations in the Tribune and the Sun. Riis himself was an immigrant. Louis Hine, a trained sociologist, had also learned the propaganda value of the camera. This evidence he collected was a major factor in the passing of protective child labor laws. About the same time, Harvard University was bringing together a carefully organized group of photographs, not as a propaganda force, but as a serious tool for social study. In 1880, the halftone was invented. This was followed by rotogravure. The photograph now replaced the hand-cut illustrations as the medium of news. The photo agencies appeared, and in many cases, they became the pictorial archives of the city's growth. The published photograph has been a real force in the development of our cities. We have seen some great and beautiful photojournalism. Great as the picture publications are, as a force, they cannot compare with the gross impact of television. Television is, in effect, an information service piped into all homes. There is some possibility of selection, but not much. It has brought decision-making much closer to the community level. It has produced a universal sense of expectation, in which each individual feels that he has a right to those things that he has seen others have. There's another tradition of images where the essential considerations are ones of measurement and analysis. This includes map-making and schematic notations. With photography came photogrammetry. The camera was the automatic recording, remote sensing device. The first balloon photography was done in 1858. It took less than 2 decades to develop the principles and practice of the aerial survey. George Lawrence, a wizard with kites and outsized negatives, managed to get by far the best graphic record of the damage to San Francisco in 1906. By 1912, the Germans were attempting aerial photography by rocket. And before World War I was over, the art of aerial reconnaissance was well on its way to becoming a science. The aerial photograph did a lot more for analysis than provide a map-making and reconnaissance tool. It broadened the view of the city literally and intellectually at a very critical moment in urban affairs. It reopened many questions. What gives cities their form? What makes them grow the way they do and die the way they do? It produced a beautifully precise brand of archaeology. While doing much to enrich the world of the scholar, it seemed to have little effect on the troubled cities themselves. It did, however, have a great effect among specialists working in environmental fields. In attempting to clarify their own problems, they have become involved in a variety of techniques, producing images, displaying them, and modifying them. It is clear that this will have an effect on city models. Seeing a selection of these images together might suggest how they can be brought together and used together. One group deals with views taken through carefully selected slots in the electromagnetic spectrum. The spectral multiband camera takes 9 simultaneous views, each exposed in a particular band. Special combinations of images are printed back through filters to reveal different information. False color emulsions accomplish much the same. Light from the infrared end of the spectrum is processed into unreal color. Red, for example, is grass, and defines, among things, the health and quality of vegetation. Farther into the invisible infrared spectrum, radiation is measured by a scanning device and appears here as a heat image of New Orleans. From the satellite Nimbus 2, another heat-sensitive scanner transmits information. A computer calculates temperatures for 5 mile squares, and an optical device converts into a color mosaic. The Carolinas are green, the ocean is yellow, the warmer Gulf Stream in tones of red. Still longer than the infrared, microwaves are emitted in different patterns by each material on the ground surface. This image of the West Coast was taken at night through heavy cloud cover by radar. The waves were reflected, converted to a scanning signal on a cathode ray tube, and recorded on film. It is a consistent and repeatable process, making any changes easily detected. Another set of images. They have to do with nature as it acts on the city. Earthquake prediction is one example. From past quakes, their location and Richter magnitude, the computer constructs a map of the stresses around the San Andreas Fault. This is a computer-generated simulation of the world's weather made by the National Center for Atmospheric Research. The moving lines represent a week's worth of pressure patterns. The cloud patterns of a single day, reconstructed from information radioed to Earth by an ESA Applications Technology satellite parked 22,000 miles above the Amazon. By showing fast repetitions of a small segment, it is possible to recognize many subtleties of the weather process. A close view of the area around Chicago. The red dots are tornadoes. Hurricane Betsy hitting Brownsville, Texas. A radar image of the kind used to build a formation and behavior theory. The negative of this remarkable nighttime snapshot was examined by a microdensitometer. Density contours were mapped showing violent activity within. The city also acts on nature with some possible positive side effects, but mostly as a pollutant. It deflects the currents of air, upsets the normal evaporation rate, traps the heat. These are the shifting Manhattan heat patterns seen in the course of a day. On a thermogram, Barnes Engineering Company records the different degrees of emitted heat as different colors. This heat affects the city's climate. In Washington, D.C., the urban climatologists of the U.S. Weather Bureau have studied this effect in the heat island it sets up. The moving edges mark lines of equal temperature, or isotherms. The rainfall is affected. Bell Labs have processed information from a 60 square mile area in East New Jersey, generating a real-time computer display of the variations within a rainstorm. The surprising subtleties of storm behavior are much like those of the city. The search continues for images that will reveal the process through change of time and emphasis. Some behaviorists and anthropologists armed with cameras have joined the fascinating hunt. Crowd estimation. Organizers claimed 200,000. Police estimate 50,000. Actual head count 35,000. Remote sensing data, when combined with samplings of ground truth, yields precise social and economic information. Census by satellite becomes very real. The population density of the United States plotted on a computer. In a study of how census data could be made useful at the local level, the Bureau entered a test census of New Haven into a computer. In the outputs, location of ethnic distribution, substandard housing, preschool children, and overcrowding can be related. The symbols vary, but the direction of many images today is toward showing the functions of our super communities as an organic process. For the state of North Carolina, Richard Werman has analyzed a complex of towns in the Winston-Salem region. He animates the development of economic and social functions from 1850 to the year 2000. Among intricate urban interdependencies, one dramatic example stands out. The electrical power network of the eastern states developed as a self-reinforcing system. Then on the evening of November 9th, 1965, it happened. A misset protective relay tripped. In the frantic surge that followed, the New York power pool collapsed, isolating eastern New York and New England. What then took place in 11 minutes is shown in the next 11 seconds. Suddenly, cut off from the system, New England was unable to support the overload. Such an image might apply to other complex interdependencies, less obvious than the blackout. The Bureau of Public Roads uses this computer-generated study of traffic loading. Within such systems are individual decisions that are being helped by some powerful graphic tools. This program by Peter Kamnitzer at UCLA's Urban Laboratory responds with an evaluation of each change. The operator sees the impact it will have on the community. Another of the Urban Laboratory's programs at NASA's Houston Space Center permits free movement in a real-time scale through a mathematical model of a space. A physical model or drawing does not exist. We are seeing a computer output. The magic is not just that you can see it, but that you can modify it. An organization chart can show the communication along official channels. But there are questions about the process that are now just being touched. Who speaks to whom when they are in trouble? This reveals something about a city government or any such group that must face their problems together. It will not be too long before almost everyone will live in some large urban environment. Within the cities, families and individuals are moving with greater frequency. The city becomes, in effect, an assembly of guests. Who then are the hosts? When does such a mass become critical? Most urban problems are old ones. They have just become more intense. What is new and necessary is the ability to see them together as a process, and the opportunity to take effective, coordinated action before it is too late. If information about the city is to be turned into meaning, then this information must be observed as a process. There must be imagery and models available where each special group can try out the effects of its own particular changing needs in the light of the changing needs of others.